NFC West, we have the Arizona Cardinals with a B plus. I did really like their draft class. I just didn't really like their free agency. I think what they did is they, got Sean Murphy Bunting. They raised the floor of the roster, and they kind of were trying to add the talent through the draft. So it is a complementary class for draft and free agency. And getting Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey Benson, Max Melton, Darius Robinson, Isaiah Adams, Tip, Ryman, you can go down the list. All of these players are good players and can contribute for them immediately. Even getting Christian Jones was a good pick. So I think the Cardinals are setting themselves up. Obviously, they are a ways away, but I would not be surprised if they're a little bit better than people expect next year.
No, see, I think that's completely fair because, again, Kyler gets his fair amount of disrespect, but we've seen there are games where Kyler will kind of just go out there and do his thing and almost will the team to victory, especially with Marv by his side now. I mean, this team, they're no scrub. Trey McBride, he's not become a household name yet, but he will soon. Trey McBride is a really talented guy out there. I mean, this offensive group, Michael Wilson makes another jump. All of a sudden the Cardinals and James Conner and Trey Benson, who I think could come take that starting job much sooner than a lot of people think, as talented as James Conner is and as good of ball as he played last year. It's a good problem to have if you're the Cardinals because you got a fantastic running back room. Again, though, much like I just said about the Chargers, you could apply this to both sides of the ball. Apply this to the defense and offense. I think we're going to get a very heavy dose of investment into the interior next year for how they're going to have to build this team going forward. But on the 1 year that they had this year of making adjustments and changes, I think you say you added Mac Wilson. I like that move a lot. Max Melton is going to be your new corner one. You desperately need a corner. Love Max Melton. They made a lot of moves that are going to immediately impact the team this year, but it's not enough to move the needle where they're going to be a threat or anything. But it's certainly, I think we could agree, was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think Monty had another good draft, and that's something that is so promising, I think, for the Cardinals is regardless about how you feel about Gannon, you know that you have a very good GM in there who knows how to wheel and deal and start to put together a team and knows what value is when looking at a player. Moving into our next team, we have the Los Angeles Rams with an A minus. So they got Kevin Dotson re-signed. They signed Jonah Jackson. So they really did secure that interior of the offensive line. They got Tre'Davious White. They got Cam Curl. They got Darius Williams. So they solidified their secondary. They also got Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Brennan Jackson later on. So they secured, I don't want to say secured, but definitely upgraded their defensive line. I think they kind of had to after losing Aaron Donald. Then you get Bo Limmer, a center later, Tyler Davis. So they went heavy on defensive line. They got Cam Kitchens. I'm a big Cam Kitchens guy. I think going to the Rams, I had him mocked there a couple times in my mock draft madness. Cam Kitchens and Cam Curl, the Cam squared, is going to do some damage in LA. But I think it's cool adding Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, especially because they both played at FSU.
No, yeah, I think we would agree. For what the capital they had, for the expectations we had for them, it's very safe to say the Rams went in and had an absolute home run of an offseason, especially considering you don't really know how much is left in the tank for Stafford. I'll tell you this. They're giving him every chance possible, and they're doing everything they need to do to try to give him another Super Bowl window, right? And that's if you're the Rams, if you're Stafford, that's really all you can say that you would ask for. I meant to say if you're a Rams fan, right? They're going all in, but here's the thing. I want to say on top of that it's not only that, they're also making all the right moves that even if this window doesn't end up being the window and you got to move on and you have to figure out the QB situation again soon, you're in a position where you have so many productive young guys that this team is adding where they're not going to have to pay that contract immediately. You're going to have at least three, for most, 2 at least more years after this before you have to even really sign any big up-and-coming contracts. You added Tre'Davious White, who everyone kind of forgot about. But if Tre'Davious White can come back and be healthy, I mean, man, oh man, bro, this team is really, really actually a team that's able to compete with almost anyone. I mean, call it for what it is, right? If Staff can come back healthy, this team is competitive.
And I think that's what we love about the Rams so much is they have been building for the future, but they also have kept themselves competitive enough where it's like if you get the right team going, you guys get hot at the right time, you can win another ring. Like Stafford still has it. Um, I am kind of concerned about their future at quarterback. I do think getting Sam Howell would have been amazing for them, but overall,
Yeah.
like the Rams are still a scary team. I mean, hitting on Puka was nuts. So overall, I think the Rams are set up in good position to excel in 2024. San Francisco 49ers, we have them with an A minus. I like Leonard Floyd. I like Gross Matos, Malik Collins. They did a lot in free agency to the defense. Didn't really touch the offense that much outside of extending Colton McKivitz. And, you know, Ricky Pearsall in the first. We've been on the Slick Rick train for quite a while. I think a lot of people thought it was a reach. I do not. I think he is a great addition for Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. I do like Renardo Green. I like Dominic Pooney. I mean, they probably had one of my favorite draft classes, as much as it fucking pains me to say it because I am just a 49ers generational hater. But I can't look at this class and be upset. Like they killed it. They knocked it out of the park.
No, knocked it out of the park. And you could compare them very much to what we just said about the Rams. Probably even to a higher extent, knowing that they just came off of a Super Bowl berth. But the concept is the same. Where you're building for the future in areas where you're considering guys that you might have to let go of soon, right? I.e., Ayuk, Debo, and you're thinking about the future with, again, because everyone forgets, but my guy, Jacob Cowing, Brandon Cooks, little 2.0, if he can hit his ceiling. Yeah, you had him and Pearsall in this same class. Those are two just sneaky. Well, Ricky's not sneaky anymore like we thought he was going to be, but those are two guys that can come in and really produce for you. They keep using the draft picks on guys that they're going to have to use that they're going to need to fill in the future because you already have a good cornerback room now, but you never know, right? When re-signs happen, it's going to come time to make some decisions. Now you already have a guy like Renardo Green in the building on a cheap contract. Like the Niners are doing exactly what the Rams were just like we were just saying, building for the future, but also staying incredibly competitive in the moment. I think one thing we'd agree on that we'd say 1,000%. I would have definitely liked, and I don't understand why they didn't address the interior, whether it was the center or the left guard at some point, whether it was free agency or the draft. That to me is pretty surprising. And I think we could agree is really the only reason that they don't stand at an A or an A plus because they
So
did fail to address the area that killed them the most in the Super Bowl.
I will say this. They do have Pooney on the NFL draft site marked as a guard. And on the depth chart, they also have him as a guard, which didn't he play tackle in college? Or am I tripping?
Yeah, but I thought he was going to be one of those guys that was going to switch over to guard, so it makes sense.
They also did take Jared Kingston out of USC, who was a guard. So they took a couple swings on guys, just not a lot of like high capital on these
Yeah,
guys.
I thought it would be high cap. And again, if they spent a higher pick on a guy like a Christian Haynes or something, this is an AA plus offseason to me. That's the only thing that holds them back.
Moving on to our last team, 32 out of 32. We have the Seattle Seahawks with a B plus. So I do like the Laken Tomlinson signing. They kind of let a lot of people go in free agency, but I think that they had such a good draft class that it kind of outweighs what their grade is for free agency. I mean, getting Byron Murphy at pick 16, getting Sam Howell in that trade with the Commanders, I really liked. I think it's going to be exciting to see him. I don't know if Geno is going to be the starter all year this year. Christian Haynes to solidify that interior. You get Nehemiah Pritchett to help in the cornerback room, even though you don't really need it. And they get DJ James, who I think is a really good underrated corner. AJ Barner is a tight end. I think they did a really good job drafting. I just am interested to see kind of what their free agency approach is next year because I think with kind of the new head coach, and I know John Schneider is the GM there, but we know Pete Carroll was making a lot of picks. So I want to know what Schneider's draft class looks like after a year of kind of looking and evaluating the roster for what it is.
No, that's a great point. And more than anything, I think, yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. Like the draft class carries them because they didn't do a ton that I like loved in free agency, but they also, here's what I will say. They got the steal to me of free agency in Tyrell Dodson, where one of those guys where a lot of people probably don't know who Tyrell Dodson is right now. They're scratching their head a little bit. But from the Bills last year, highest graded linebacker in the entire league. Again, on a fair number of snaps. I think he only was out there about like 580, 600 snaps, something around those lines. But when he was out there, man, oh man, was he playing fantastic football. And if he can come take that same level of ball he was playing in Buffalo and bring that over to the Seahawks defense and take that Bobby Wagner role and just dominate in it, I mean, that will be the steal that we look back onto this free agency class. So I think very potentially the Seahawks did get that guy. And again, this defense is really coming together. So if you could get, nobody's gonna be Bobby Wagner 2.0, but you get my point. If you can get your Bobby replacement, and now really you're running this defense kind of like an older style Seahawks defense, just locked down secondary, linebackers that really can make things happen in Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson. The edge rushers, like I say, very underrated group of in Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu. Safety core a little bit, I don't know how to feel about, like, it's not that it's a bad core, but Julian Love, Rayshawn Jenkins it's not the greatest safety duo in the world. But for the way the Seahawks play and they're how shell oriented that they are, you know what? It certainly is going to get the job done. And I think what you can say is more than anything, the Seahawks can compete in the NFC. Again, I don't know how far they can go, but this is a roster that can compete.